the world scheme of things are omitted from aspects of major world discipline. What I mean by that is this long world discipline. What I mean by that is this normally wouldn't be cataloged, even for most black people as well as white people, as one of the most one of the major aspects of life on the planet. Mm-hmm. When we talk about certain things that shape people's lives, and I'm quite sure they will put it in the category of the arts, but I'm talking about something that is vital to the universe itself. A lot of times this stuff gets passed over because the simple fact is there's not enough adequate history given to the particular field in its whole entirety. We don't start from point A to point Z when we talk about this particular side of life and this particular discipline. And this particular discipline, I know as black people, and we know as black people, is one of the quintessential forms of our survival. It's been through none other than the discipline of music mm-hmm. and sound mm-hmm. and the arts. Mm-hmm. And what I want to do is give an overview of a historical concept of music and its relationship with melanin. And not only that, how it has gone as a theme in our lives that was right along with our plight, our rise, our joys, our destruction, all of that can be put in a soundtrack of music. Mm-hmm. Not only will we answer why is this music so important, we're going to show that our lives, for all intents and purposes, is nothing but another rendition of sound. So I need to start with a history of this at this particular point. That's where I'm going to start. With a history of music starting from ancient Kemet and going on into the future on how this thing got to be the phenomenon that it is at this particular time. Mm-hmm. And so let me go into this particular information at this particular time because I think it's very important because there's a major conspiracy. There's a major conspiracy that is going on right now. Mm-hmm. And I want to go into this. To start off, we must understand that we don't want to make the mistake the same because we have been reintroduced into our ancient antiquity, or classical antiquity, where ancient Egypt or ancient Kemet is the catalyst. We never want to say what is African and what is not African, what is Egyptian or Camite, and what is not Camite or Egyptian. Because the Library of Alexandria was burnt down twice. Mm-hmm. And no matter how much is left behind in ancient Kemet, we're still dealing with fragments. Mm-hmm. But the fragments alone can fill every museum on the planet And we have enough hieroglyphics to wrap around the moon 10 times. But still yet, we're only dealing with a small piece of the mass amount of knowledge and information and wisdom that was cultivated in the land that we know of as Kemet. So I think it's unfair for us to get to a point to say we know all there is to know about that particular area or that particular historical aspect, because we may never know, because we don't have, number one, we don't have the years, we don't have the amount of time. I mean, we're just relearning this particular stuff for most part a little over maybe 15, 16, 17 years for some people, and for most people about 14 years, 10 years, 9 years. But this is nothing compared to just 3,000 years conservative. But if we want to go further back into this, we can say 8,000 years. So it's not fair for us to say, oh, that couldn't be because there is no records of it. Well, number one, because there are no records of nothing, doesn't necessarily mean that it's not, that it didn't happen, and there's not, and not only that, it's not a possibility, and we shouldn't talk about it. We know enough spiritually, and we know enough with our common sense to understand that it had to have been something greater, because we know that the Egyptians, just studying their culture, they knew damn near everything, especially more than what we will ever know. But when we talk about this, if the Library of Alexandria was burnt down twice, and that was only talking about what was recorded, and that's not even talking about what went out in the rest of the world and was translated in other cultures, then we're not, and this is excluding what we brought into Europe. But to understand this, we must understand, for the lack of a better word, we must understand the history of the muse, which is just the Greek word. Well, I really don't care at this particular point. I'm mostly interested in the clarification of sound, of what we call it, a sound, or what the phenomena is. In this particular case, the origin of music in the aspect of where it was cultivated was known without a shadow of a doubt in ancient Kemet, or ancient Egypt. To document this, there's several works that's coming out. There's two books by a guy from Cairo named Mustafa Kadala that talks about music. I'll give you the bibliography up front. Another portion of the bibliography is a book called Hermeticism and Gnosticism. And this particular book is put out by the State University of New York. State University of New York. And it's a book that is dealing with fragments that was, number one, taken from the Library of Alexandria by the Roman occupation, and other new entries of information that was found in Egypt in 1945 when they dug up these Coptic texts called the Nag Hammadi Library. Now, the Nag Hammadi Library was up in 1945, which is the later day Egyptian Coptic recording this particular information. And that would be the Hermetic, that would be the Gnostic side of the actual research that they were doing at State University of New York. And And the Latin occupation of these same texts that came out, came out of the Library of Alexandria earlier, what would be known as Hermeticism. And in that particular book, Hermeticism and Gnosticism.
Hermeticism is related to Hermes.
Hermes, right?
Dealing with occult sciences.
No, Hermes is the Greek word for the god Tahuti, Thoth, but we know him as Tahuti. Tahuti is the god of wisdom, the god of knowledge, the god of learning, the god of writing, and the god of the arcane art of chemistry known as alchemy. Alchemy is the prototype of chemistry. It's called Al, which means S-O-N, sun, S-U-N, sun. It also means God, has several meanings, but it's also a name for Horus. Al, Horus, Heru. One of his names is Al, El. Later on you get your Elohim and different things in the Hebrew thing, but it was Al, El, even the word Allah. That El is a name for the word Heru, Horus, which has several names. Another name for the word Heru is Pharaoh. Pharaoh, Heru, Pharaoh. Another name for that's the Egyptian king, Pharaoh. Pharaoh. Another word, Horus, Heru. Another name for Heru is Heru, Guru, Guru. That's the people in India who are supposed to be the spiritual sages or the spiritual people called the gurus. So you get, so this name is a multiple meaning, but another name is Al, and then you get the word Kim.
Now, go ahead.
Al and Kim, which means black land and black people. Then you get the word alchemy. And the breakdown of alchemy goes straight into chemistry.
Correct.
You see. So all this is related.
As to Horus, what were the attributes and the characteristics of Horus?
Okay.
Within the worldview of African people.
Well, there's been great work done by Gerald Massey on the attributes of Horus, but Gerald Massey at that particular time was mainly interested in proving that the prototype of Jesus was Horus. And he was interested in proving that because that is the world he came out of and that's what was needed. And so therefore, in the Afrocentric movement, whenever our great scholars came up, they identified the same Horus with that same paradigm.
Correct.
Horus is the prototype of Jesus, or the Christ, and the prototype of the oldest prototype, one of the older prototypes of all messianic figures. Horus also has other types of paradigms in the aspect of, in the world of chemistry, take for instance, Horus, or Heru, which represents a form of transmutation. It would mean taking something old and turning something new into it. A fermentation, a mutation, not necessarily a mutation sometimes is a normal phenomenon in nature. It's not a frequent phenomenon. It might take 1 in a million chance, but it does happen. Because the course of nature and the course of the universe is the laws of change. Horus represents change. It represents the enigma. It represents the fermentation, which is also connected with black people, because no matter how desperate or how grotesque our situation may be, remember, it is only a flip side of change. It is just the other side of the coin. That's an attribute of Horus. Horus the Heru also represents the return of the repressed. That which is suppressed will return through the act of Heru, the Peri-Em Heru. Peri-Em Heru means coming forth by day. Coming forth by day, or coming into life. Peri-Em Heru. So the book of the law is called Peri-Em Heru. Coming into day, or going forth by day. Which means something coming out of its former state. So Horus, or Heru, represents the what's that? Resurrection, the return of the repressed, as well as the breaking out of conventional means. Sometimes we can be trapped with our conventional means. In ancient mythology, the word hell is a state that sometimes means repetition. Going through the same thing over and over and over and over and over again for years on end, hundreds of years on end, thousands of years on end. That's what hell means. You see, repetition. It's in the Greek mythology. Prometheus is staked to a mountain, and every day above it comes and eats out his side. Later on, Jesus is staked to the cross, and there's a spear eats out the side. Right. But in that mythology, it was that one particular single act of the spear stick it in the side. But in the earlier motifs of mythology, it is always a repetition. Every day this occurs. That is his bondage. In some Greek mythology, they would have this particular story it's in the movie, the 1963 movie, Jason and the Argonauts. There's an old man that's being cursed by the gods, and as a result, every day he's a blind man and he's hungry. But his punishment is every day they put food on the table. And every day he rushes out to get the food. Before he can get to the food, these winged, bat-looking demons come and take the food from him. And he has to go through this over and over and over again. Until Jason, which is a form of Horus, I want to give you other forms of Horus for people to read, comes and helps the old man out, and they throw a net around the demons. He and the 12 other Argonauts, they throw a net around the demons, and the man is able to eat from the food and comes out of his oppression and his repetition. So Horus represents the return of the repressed. He also represents the leap out of the bounds and change of repetition. aspects of Horus that we need to understand, because even I was talking to Charles French about 2 years ago, and he even admitted that we threw the baby out with the bathwater. And I constantly say this, because I came upon it, that Greek mythology was stolen from excuse me, get this right, this is very key. Greek philosophy was stolen from Africa. Mm-hmm. It was originally Camite philosophy. Mm-hmm. We know this now, that's undisputable. Mm-hmm. Between the last book to put the coffin on it, put the nail in the coffin, was Civilization of Barbarism by Sheikh Anta, you know, mm-hmm. which is the homecoming of stolen legacy. Mm-hmm. You see, coming to totally be vindicated and reign supreme, which started 50 years prior. No, let's see, at that particular time, he died in 1950s. Let's say 40 years prior mm-hmm. to the time of Civilization of Barbarism finally being
stolen legacy was written 40 years before.
Well, yeah, something like at that particular time. At that particular time, it was probably 30 years prior to it. Let's say like close to 35 years prior to mm-hmm. Civilization of Barbarism coming in and putting the final nail in the coffin. Mm-hmm. Greek philosophy is definitely stolen from Egyptian or African philosophy. Mm-hmm. But Greek mythology is black. There's a difference. It's separated from Greek philosophy. The stealing of Greek philosophy close to maybe 2,000 years. So don't misconstrue the two. Don't throw the baby out. Philosophy and Greek mythology. Greek mythology is black mythology, mm-hmm. coming by way of pre-dynastic Egyptians coming up out of Egypt, going into Mesopotamia or whatever they want to call that little land or whatever, mm-hmm. going into northeast Africa, mm-hmm. Going into, became the Phoenicians, mm-hmm. a group of people called the Tyrrhenians, and later on a people called the Etruscans, and later on you get the word Troy. But also a group of people called the Minoans. Mm-hmm. All these are nothing but black cultures. Mm-hmm. You see, black cultures. Mm-hmm. Etruscans, Phoenicians, Minoans, mm-hmm. Tyrrhenians, all these particular things ain't nothing but different aspects of different ages of the same Kushite empire. Mm-hmm. You see, mm-hmm. Kushite and Camite influence.
Correct.
That settled the land, and later on that particular settled Rome, Greece, and all of those particular Aegean islands or whatever they want to call them. And later on, the white people, Indo-Europeans came in and basically preserved those particular aspects of that life. But that's the original language of Latin, Greek, the mythology, and the whole system. The Iliad, the Odyssey of Homer mm-hmm. is black. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you can't say on one aspect like Count Warner that white people can't even speak at a late period, and they can create these particular stuff.
Plus, they had no institutions.
Exactly. They didn't have an institution to develop.
They didn't have an alphabet.
Right. They didn't have an alphabet.
Possibly.
They couldn't. That's right.
No institution.
Nothing.
No academics.
No academics.
No alphabet.
So all of those particular stories mm-hmm. are black, mm-hmm. and they come with the Christ figure. You get the word. You get the word Heru. Another word is her, mm-hmm. which is so-called a Greek word. You get the word Hercules. Mm-hmm. That's a form of Horus. Mm-hmm. Apollo is a form of Horus. Jason is a form of Horus. Then they have other ones called the flying horse Pegasus is a form of Horus. There's another guy called Chrysalis. Here's the Christos thing coming. Is a form of Horus, a Heru. So these things here, all these forms and all this stuff is black. And you get the word her, even the word ben her, later on is usurped in the Hebrew thing. Come to find out, Hebrew is not even the word Hebrew, the word itself is a Greek word. It's not even indigenous to the people they call Hebrew. That's a Greek word. You see?
You know, it's important to really try to understand language and history. Critical.
Exactly.
And if you look at history, if you look at the history, not the religious literature, the history, then you really don't see the Hebrews and all of that.
All that.
They're not in history.
They're not in history.
This is and what we have to do as people is understand this and understand how Christianity comes about. Understand how Islam comes about. So that we be very clear. We need to take off the blinders and the study. At least don't be afraid to look at the history and analyze it.
My point here is, why is it that if we have all this major history of the world, why is it that even in fragments, we can't find nothing but Egyptian or Camite? Now, the reason why I know this is, there's a guy named Raphael Paquet wrote a book called Hebrew Goddess. But every single statue, every single piece of bas relief that they put together to try to make the show of that particular area that they were trying to do at that time, the land of Canaan or whatever, every last one of them had the Egyptian headdress on, the Uraeus serpent crown, the Egyptian collars, that even the stuff that they were trying to front of those particular land they called Mesopotamia, Samaria, and all those particular things that they tried to say, why is it that even the doggone, when it comes to the style of the images, is still all Egyptian, all Camite? That meant that we only have one single school in that whole area that gave all that stuff to culture. And that is Kemet. That is Kemet. Now, this is one thing that Mary Lepkowitz, this old cracker woman, was talking about with the Greek thing, about it didn't borrow no culture she don't see no born of the culture. I said, wait a minute. All they got to do, she's running around the people. Because clearly, all you got to do is look at the actual mythology. And the mythology is always talking about how their particular gods ran and hid out in Greece, in Egypt. Or Ethiopia.
Right. They even said that their gods went to Ethiopia to dine.
To dine? They even said that their gods one time were so fearful of another god, Typhon, which is an Egyptian god, went and hid out in Egypt. And Kemet. They're constantly talking about this particular stuff. And why is it that there is no text, even Hebrew or Christianity, where Kemet is not named? You see what I'm saying? So, Kemet is not named. So, going back with this Heru thing, we find him in all these particular cultures.
Which is also critically important, is that Kemet's age is so old that the points of civilization that the Kemetic people had made to the world before the Europeans even came out of the ice, Africans had already brought to civilization the science, the calendar. when you think of a calendar, you think of a division of and a multiplication of time, which is a movement in space, and a space in dimension that have to be correlated. So you have time, you have degrees within a circle, and you have time in terms of movement that correlates with the 360 degrees of the sphere, of the circle, of the universe, of the galaxy. So Africans broke that down into, can you imagine a world without time? Because that's what we had. There were no days, there were no hours, there were no minutes, there were no months, there were no years. So it was just evolving continuously. Africans broke that down into time, days, weeks, months, years, seconds. Now, it's important for our people to understand and conceive the breadth of what we bring to our history and the evolution of a mind that produced that which is embedded in our culture. All of the ways that we solve the problem faced to us by environment, and I just want to move on, is embedded in our culture. And what we do, and I'm putting this back to you, when we listen to minds like yourself that have become open to these gateways, that we may again move into a more alignment of our spiritual vibration with nature itself. Because once we get, we got a great machine, and once we get that machine bound again, that's why I said drop your buckets where you are. We warm enough and take off time.
Well, you know what's interesting here, because, like you said, just alone, let's just take the cycle. That the cycle of the calendar that was fashioned off the woman's menstrual cycle. Now, there's a discrepancy. Yes, there's a discrepancy going on. Everything has a cycle. They even say that men have a cycle. Don't necessarily mean that women bled the way they do now, but they still have a cycle. So if we take a cycle, not every woman's cycle comes on at the same time. So it had to take a lot of calculation to get an accurate cycle based on a woman's period. You know what I'm saying? And it had to take some time being involved. You know? Just to amass the type of libraries of the type of information and the records that they put down. It had to take quite some time and years, you see. Plus, we must understand this about white people can't develop nothing like this for the simple fact that even something like this to try to front this lie, because the simple fact, they haven't done it in history. See, my point here is what humans have done, humans can do. So my point here is, if you were the people that laid down all this fabulous civilization, even we talk about Greece, or even we talk about the ones that want to front to say that Kemet is white, why you fail to produce it in the modern time? Why did you fail to produce? Why do you fail to produce it when we got our eye on you? You ain't never produced nothing like that. So how in the hell are you gonna do something?
That's correct.
And we haven't seen no remnant or inkling of you producing something in record time like that. Whereas you got to basically destroy half the earth to produce anything. You see what I'm saying?
They will point to the airplane.
Yes, but my point here is, yes, they will point, but my point here is, they will point to those things, but my point here is, look at the imbalance and disharmony that has to come about for them to even produce things.
Correct. Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, if I go out and kill up 1,000 chickens, maybe I might make a feather coat that's accurate enough to look like linen. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, it's just some things. Is just look at the earth, look at the toll of the earth that it's taken for him to amass his particular technology.
Right. What the Africans were able to do this was in harmony.
In harmony with nature. You feel what I'm saying? In harmony with nature.
Did not poison the air.
Exactly.
Water.
None of that.
Pollute the earth.
Exactly. You see, half of his civilization is spent cleaning up the destruction he has made.
Not only that, he continues to make a destruction that will ultimately either kill the earth or the air, which will completely transform everything on it.
Exactly.
Recycling.
There is no record of us doing that. And we talk about high advanced culture now.
But I thought it was important, and I diverted you when I asked you what was the character and characteristics of Horus, because I thought that was important in order to understand the concept of the deities and their relationship to nature.
Yes.
And that we understand, as you are talking to us now, how to make these transformations today, right now.
Well, see, it's interesting here because, see, just as we shed light on Horus, or Heru, we need to shed light on Tahuti, or Thoth, they call him. Most people, the Greek word is Thoth, the Egyptian word is Tahuti, and also Anubis, or Anpu is the Egyptian word, the Greek word is Anubis, which is known, Tahuti is known in Greece as Hermes. And there's a Greek god called Hermanubis. Hermes and Anubis put together.
Now, what are the attributes?
Well, that's just interesting because Anpu is a black dog, would be equivalent to, it's called a griffey in ancient times. It would be the domesticated Doberman Pinscher in modern times, if you want. But it's a black dog that represents, number one, it represents the guide of the souls through the underworld or through darkness. It also represents some form of, actually, to put it quite bluntly, it's also a hieroglyphic for melanin. You have your all-seeing eye that represents melanin, the eye of Heru. But you also have Anubis, which is a black dog that guides the souls through darkness.
You know, Bobby, down south, to show you how that is carried over in African American culture right here. When we hear dog bark, ooh, we say somebody's going to die or somebody has died.
That's right.
And generally it meant that it was within the family, cousin, somebody, you know.
That's right.
And sometimes within the community itself, but definitely it was associated.
The science of
to the death.
The death. And see, this dog guides the souls through the underworld or through the afterlife.
Correct.
Now, it's interesting, but that dog is also a concept of melanin. But then again, there's a Greek word to put these composites back together because we're dealing with fragments. Is a god called Hermanubis. In Kemet, he would be called Tax-On, or Soft-On, or Tax-On, which is nothing but another form of Tahuti. In so many words, this is all different characteristics of the same entity. Tahuti, Anubis, Hermanubis. Hermes is the Greek word for Anubis, is the Greek word for Tahuti, and you get this word Hermanubis, which is a composite. In so many words, Anubis and Anpu, black dog, and Tahuti is one and the same. It's just different stages. The Tahuti is a much more philosophical and a broader range of what the entity is. It's a God of reading, writing, a God of knowledge, wisdom, again, a God of chemistry, which was originally alchemy, a God of art and the sciences, and a God of music.
Now, before you get into the music, just this question again, please.
Yes, good.
When you say that God, I think we need to understand what we're talking about when we say God.
Yeah, I got you.
You know, so that we can, I'm looking at people being able to understand the basic principles, and if they can understand the elements of the principles.
That's right.
Then they can activate them.
Good.
I mean,
that's what makes you the best interviewer.
I want us to drop out. Okay. Where we are.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent question. Remember we was talking about we can't separate science from spirituality, and the Africans didn't do that.
Right.
That is a consensus agreed upon by the Europeans. Never should the two meet to polarize people. In this case, these Egyptian deities are not only spirits, cosmic, elemental, or whatever, they're also formulas. And you should look at them on both ways. You never separate it. They're formulas. That's why I said that it's a God of chemistry, a God of alchemy, chemistry. I'm a God of gods of the four elements. These are also formulas. So when we say a God of, these are attributes, and they are literally scientific entities or scientific forces. I like that word, forces, because a force is something that is above something that is something that the general word of science. But these are formulas.
Can you explain? Can you talk about that for a moment? Can you?
These are formulas.
How do you make formulas?
On one aspect, I guess the best way to explain it would be to go back to mythology. And the reason why I go back to mythology is because I find in the later years of going through endless amounts of study, the only thing that I find out now that I have never been able to completely master, and when I say that, I'm not talking about in a negative term, completely master is mythology. It is not supposed to be mastered. It is supposed to be, you're supposed to evolve with it. Number one, the mythology is put down here in an age of what they call preterhuman, or a level of something that is so advanced or so spiritual, until when the age of this thing came into being as far as the writings, we have literally deteriorated from the mindset of those entities or those particular priests that wrote these things. We're on such an advanced level until the modern man can never really get on top of it, because these things came about at a time when the spirit realm was so high on the earth, until what was put down on the papers is timeless. Now, going back to mythology, it is said that the Titans were an ancient group of entities that existed prior to creation. And they were what is called the primal worlds. And from those particular primal worlds, that it lasted about the same amount of time that creation has lasted. Let's just say 13 billion years, just to give you some number. Mm-hmm. Prior to this particular world of creation, as we know it, there existed another primal world that lasted just as long. Those entities from those particular primal worlds were, in so many words, destroyed or made dormant, because you can never destroy these things. But they were transmuted into, those particular entities were transmuted into a substance that ended up creating humans. So we were created from something that existed in the primal worlds prior to creation. Well, here has already been explained the form of scientific, because there's already talking about these cosmic forces, these titan forces, these entities being broken down and reassembled into humans. If they're reassembled into humans, that means that you are talking about a human is a combination of all types of gases, all types of minerals, all types of alloys, and all types of cells on down into the organic. So you're talking about science.
Correct.
You see? So that's one of the best ways to explain the connection between formula and entity. There's a connection. So if we want to explain, you have to go back to the ancient ways, because it's more cohesive to understand the mythology, because it's much higher than somebody in modern terms trying to explain it. Especially if there's a consensus to keep people polarized by saying never should the two meet. Give you another example of mythology. There's an entity, Tiamat. All of these are another different names of Egyptian entities. Tiamat is defeated. Her body is used to create the earth. Well, right there, you already going back to science, because earth is represented of every ecological thing in the universe you can think about is in the formulas of earth that makes up earth. Well, it went from entity to this big rock we call earth. So Tiamat's blood was used to create earth, and her husband, Kingu's blood was used to create human. So in so many words, here it is again, where the ancients have stories of deity on down into human, deity on down into earth, which represents nature. You see? So in so many words, this is, in the mythology, which I just explained to you, the unified force field.
Correct.
In written words.
In their worldview, the unified force theory was built in. In their worldview.
Right. You see, it was all there.
Yeah.
You see. Now,
I just want to say, that's why I don't know if you know Professor Gabriel Evo.
He was telling me that.
A Nigerian who has actually formalized the universal system in the mathematical form. And he says to us, again, drop your buckets where you are. We have a very fine machine. What we needed to learn was chemistry. We need to learn the things that were natural to us in the beginning, when we're in our right mind. Chemistry, and these are things that African people brought forth as gifts of civilization. And that high form of chemistry, which is to put the elements together which is to put the elements. Man, I'm just not. Cool. As I was saying, I'm getting a deeper appreciation for Professor Evo's Unified Field Theory. Because science is used to keep us oppressed and to oppress Africa. But these are sciences that our children don't have to be afraid of. We brought them forth. And when we begin to master what is originally coming through us, it's in our DNA. It is in our DNA because we are the sum of our culture. The deep wisdom of our people is collected within the body of our culture and our music, in our elder wisdom, in our very being, in our melanin. The DNA is there. So we can access it. So please continue, because this is what we're trying to do.
Right. So the mythology, as well as the Egyptian deities or the Canaanite deities, explain formulas. Why is it that they've even shown that the Canaanite deities can be broken down into mathematical formulas? Well, you got the Aya Heru, and then they show you how it's broken down into mathematics. You know what I'm saying? It's broken down into mathematics. Great work. They just resurfaced. Took them years. Took them 38 years to finally put the complete volumes of the Temple of Man out. Or he swallowed the Lubitz. You mean a little small book, The Temple in Man, was out for years. But the two mass volumes of The Temple of Man by R.H. Swallowed the Lubitz was put out in 98, which is, I think, what, $300-400 for these both volumes, and another single volume of Karnak's Temple. But the story goes with him is when he was in France and was doing all this type of stuff and was showing the people that that the Egyptians' science was very advanced. Other than this stuff here, some stupid people burying the dead in the pyramids and the general consensus of the Egyptologists, the French government sent out a guy to go and try to debunk what Swallowed the Lubitz was saying. But the guy ended up getting in a car wreck, and as a result, Swallowed the Lubitz work went on into the future as the incredible science. But in his work, he shows the mathematical breakdown of the Temple of Luxor, the mathematical breakdown of the gods, on into formulas, on into all of that type of stuff. You see what I'm saying? They're working for 15 years at the Temple of Luxor alone. So the science is actually there. The science is actually there. There's a book called The Wisdom of the Temple by him. Good works by him. Sacred Science, Wisdom of the Temple, Temple in Man, in the big volume, Temple of Man, the Karnak book. And his wife, Isha de Lubitz, did two called Her About the Egyptian Initiates. And all this to explain all the science based on the music and all of that. So, going into this particular science, the music aspect comes out of the Hermetic school of what they call the priesthood of Tahuti at the city of On in Heliopolis. And comes out of that priesthood of Tahuti. Later on, the priesthood of Hermes, what they call it the Hermetic science. And that's in that book, Gnosticism and Hermeticism, put out by the State University of New York. They document the music coming out of the Hermetic schools. So we're talking about science that is rooted in ancient Kemet. Now, what is this music? The first thing off the bat is music is in fact melanin put to scale in a nutshell.
Well, how do you give us a vision of that?
Give you a vision. First I'll give you the science fiction, then I'll give you the facts. It went in the flame. In the Star Wars that came out in 1999, The Phantom Menace, he has one little part. The movie was almost nothing, but they had one little part in there where they're trying to explain what the Force is. Now, the Force is supposed to be the unified theory field that binds the universe together. The universe is bound together from one single force that binds everything together. But he says that the Force in the first three movies is this thing that the Jedi, which is supposed to be the warriors in Star Wars, have this overwhelming force that binds them together, that makes them superior to all the other people. Well, the word Jedi comes from the word Dijedi, in Kemet, which is the Jedi pillar, which means the backbone of Osiris, which is nothing but the Kundalini. And at the top of the Kundalini is the third eye. So the Force is nothing but melanin. So later on, so that's what the Force is in a nutshell in the first three Star Wars. In the fourth Star Wars, The Phantom Menace, he goes and explains deeper what the Force is, and he calls it midichlorians, which is these microscopic organisms inside of the human body. And the Jedi, which is the black people with the third eye, have more midichlorians than any other humans. So therefore, they're bound together with the universe because they can control things, because they are one with the universe, because they have these microscopic organisms in their body. In so many words, he has explained the alchemical structure of melanin.
Would that also explain why the European is so frantic about unraveling DNA?
Yeah, the DNA, but this is the key. Now, because I'm going to adopt, that's the science fiction part, and let me give you the science fact part.
Mm-hmm.
We're dealing with fragments here. And we've already proven that the Greek mythology is ours. So in the Greek mythology, what is found out, even the guy, Professor Carl Carini, wrote a couple of books, Gods of the Greeks, Heroes of the Greeks. And in these particular books, he goes in and he shows that the word, these things called gnomes, elves, mermaids, melophanes, water nymphs, ash tree, all of these little things in fairy tales is in the Greek mythology. And later on it's produced in fairy tales. In actuality, these are living forces within the body. Carl Jung wrote several books, Psychology and Alchemy, Alchemical Studies, Aeon, and these books where he explained these same things, melophanes and all these little things in mythology. Later on, the origin of fairy tales is actually living forces within the body. Mm-hmm. So what they help actually explain here in a nutshell, that this is what melanin really is. It is alive substances, microscopic organisms that is in the body that only become broken down elements once removed from its vessel, the human body. But inside of the body and throughout the whole central nervous system is what is a complete civilization within our DNA and within our body. Now, what I am saying to you is, I am finally, for once and for all, giving you one of the great mysteries of why the Africans say they call on the ancestors. Mm-hmm. And the mystery here is if we are forces contained in a universe and contained in our physical bodies, because we are not our physical bodies, then the Africans believe when the ancestors died, they go to live inside of us. That's why they say call on them. Well, if you're calling on something that's in California, it can't very well listen to you. That means that they are with you. That's why they have accounts of people when they die. The people that's living on earth start having dreams of them. Mm-hmm. You see, start having dreams of them. So what I'm trying to say here is, melanin is more than a substance. Mm-hmm. It is an intelligence. It is an entity, and it is a civilization within the central nervous system. That melanin is called the muse. Mm-hmm. The muse is supposed to be a living entity that is seen not only as creative forces, but is also represented as gods. So in so many words, we are all, anything that you apply to an entity, you apply to yourself and you apply inwardly. So, whenever we create music, among other things, art, music, and science, we are only producing outwardly an intelligence and a civilization that's on the inside. Helen is within. We are only putting that to scale and putting it to the level in which we can use it in the physical. So we are bringing something that is not in existence, which means the existence only refers to the physical realm. There's other existence outside of the physical. So we're taking something that is not in the physical and bringing it in the physical. That's why the African used the drum, because it is not the beat that is being heard. It is the spaces in between the beats that's being heard. So what the Africans have actually done with the drum is actually created something that is silent. They beat, and then time the beat and another beat. In between the beats, they have created silence loudly. So you're taking something that is silent and not in existence and bringing it through into existence by beating the drum. This is the basis of music, is your percussion and your bass. You see. So what you're doing is you're creating an ecological system that is outside of a dimension. You're bringing that same ecological system in the dimension through sound. And what is sound? Vibrations. And the first laws of the wisdom of Tahuti, or what they call Hermetic philosophy, is the first law of the universe, the law of what? Vibration. You see. Vibration. Now, dealing with this particular science, music then is melanin put to scale. It is somehow a recording of something that is inner. And what is in us is the spheres of heaven, or the spheres of entities that give us this particular information, or this particular music, or this particular sound.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me get into a couple of things so that we can understand something. The Moors,
Mm-hmm.
when they went up into Spain for 700 years, and they opened up the 16 universities, they took the harp up to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't play the harp upright.
You mean the Europeans?
Europeans. So what they had to do was they had to take the harp and turn it sideways and create the piano.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the Moorish creation, which set up the basis for European music.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
The scale that we use in classical music comes from out of Kemet, out of the Hermetic school, or the wisdom of Tahuti, brought to the European by the Moors. And for 700 years, even Beethoven is known as the Moor of Russia, or whatever that is,
Mm-hmm.
the Black Moor. Mm-hmm. And for 700 years, they were taught the theory of music.
And this was the same as the African had brought.
It's the same one. How did they get it? Going back, when the Arabs invaded Egypt, or Kemet, what had happened is those particular groups of Arabs, that when they invaded Kemet, the Egyptian priests, this is quintessential that we understand what went on. Because some people still can't get it. They say, well, look, how could the Moors teach all this Egyptian stuff and they were Islamic?
Mm-hmm.
The Egyptian priests, these sets of Moors who came together with other type of entities. What happened was they had a group that they used as a fighting force, and they were nothing but the strong arm under the behest of the priest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Islam has nothing to do with it. You see, the Africans knew that they could take Islam as a banner and a uniting force to get behind, not because they believed in Allah and all that stuff there and all, they understood the greater significance of it. Hell, Muhammad even knew that Bilal and all that kind of stuff, it was the inventors of every damn thing, and Bilal was from Ethiopia.
Mm-hmm.
They could take a religion. What we don't understand about a religion is we do it all the time. The preachers do it all the time. You can take a religion, and a religion can act no different than your Democratic Party or your Republican Party. It can be a political instrument.
Right.
Don't we have people in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party of different religions? Don't we have people of the both parties that is of the same religion?
Mm-hmm.
And although they could be of the same religion or same belief system or different ones, they are all united under two parties. Mm-hmm. Well, they could take a religion at that particular time, that Islam being the new religion and a religion of conquest, and they could unite under the banner of Islam as a political party.
Correct.
And take the information and the knowledge up into a place and unite this knowledge and this particular information to give to a people, to teach a people. They have to still root it in some type of political and religious base. And they use Islam only as a religious, political base to put forth and bring forth all of this particular knowledge and information in Europe. Now, I want to say this one thing, because my brother asked this question. I even asked the question 10 years ago. Well, my goodness, why did the damn Moors want to teach the Europeans anything? And this question has been asked from a lot of people. Well, my goodness, if the Moors hadn't gone up in there, we might have had a different story. We might, they might have been united enough to put us in slavery, or technologically found to do some things. They might have been educated, might have been savage. The Moors understood knowledge because the Moors were Egyptian priests that had lived by knowledge since the beginning of Kemet, that the earth would fall to the barbarian. They had already had it in so many prophecies. They had it in the same wisdom of Tahuti. They knew that this was going to happen. So they said, listen, we understand that we will go into a hibernation period, and the world will be taken over by the animal man, as they call him in several texts. Now, we got two things to do. Either we give him a certain amount of information to bring him to a certain semi-barbaristic state, that we can one day get that knowledge and information back because he would have cultivated it for us, or we can not teach him and all this be lost. Because whether we like it or not, we are going into the hibernation state, because that is, it's like Dr. Ben said, oh, our thing deteriorated. We didn't fall. If you understand that we had been there for thousands and thousands of years, thus goes the earth. Everything goes into a hibernation period because the laws of the universe is called the laws of chaos, which means change is supreme. Right. So, if you're going to have a people that might flip up ruling one day, would you rather them rule with a certain amount of knowledge and information that one day you can get the knowledge and information back when you wake up, or when you come out of your plight, or would you rather for them to be so ignorant till the knowledge is lost? Let me give it an example of how knowledge can be lost based on ignorance. When the Arabs took Egypt in the 6th century A.D., for almost close to 800 years, close to 1,000 years, they sat on the greatest relics known to man in Kemet, or Egypt. Long before Napoleon and the British or anybody got there, they had it. But this white Arab was such a savage until for 800 to close to 1,000 years, he didn't do a thing. He sat on the greatest knowledge in the world and didn't do one thing to learn it, to cultivate it, or nothing. And it had to take the white man to come up in there and start excavating that stuff out with the rise of Napoleon.
He didn't even dig it out.
He didn't even dig it out.
So you know that his contribution to civilization and all that Europeans want to say that he brought to Europe is a lie.
It's a lie. It had to have been a black people, it had to have been a priestly people, because the same white Arab that supposedly conquered Europe, and conquered the whole Middle East at that particular time, because Rome had fallen, went into Kemet where the crux of this particular knowledge and information laid at his feet for 800 years, and he didn't even try to even learn it. Didn't dig it up, and sand covered it up.
Didn't even take a good look at it.
Didn't even take a good look at it. But yet we supposed to think that these are the people that taught the Europeans and all. That's a lie, because we know that those Europeans were taught by the Egyptian priests under the name of the Moors. And that had nothing to do with the savage Arab.
And all you got to do is
look at
the evolution of the Arab.
of the Arab.
Who is the Arab? Where does he come from, and when?
I believe it's like our man Sermon said, from a miscegenation of different types of. It is of races. It's like
the mixture.
The mixture is like John Henry Clark said, the dumping ground of humanity.
Yeah, the prodigy of rape.
Right. Exactly. And then and there's something that was thrown away. And it's so savage that it couldn't even cultivate the knowledge and the information. And in the modern world, didn't even cultivate the oil that it set on. It took the white man to go in there and build the refineries and teach them how to doggone excavate and raise the oil.
See, Bob, this is why the work of Walter Williams is critical. Because you will understand that where Islam, you understand the process, how Christianity evolved, how Islam evolved. And you will see that the Melkite Coptic Egyptians is the priesthood that put that into motion. And you'll see that. And you find out that most of that Christianity and all that stuff was nothing of the until all of that, until they put that virgin into action. They are the catalyst of that. He's right. And that's why black people need to really understand how these three religions comes about: Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. And then they can free their mind by just understanding the process. Yes, that's one of the problems with all of this is we don't have the history of it. I find that, okay, this is one thing. I find it out now because now when we went into this Afrocentric movement, we didn't know what the outcome was going to be. Now we do know because we can separate between the people who did learn something in the course of the last 15 years, which is a minority of let's say 2%, 0.something, 1%. When you talk about all the masses of black people that don't know nothing, compared to the ones who don't know, I find one thing now, in retrospect, is that it's whenever you speak of certain things now, to the unlearned, the ones who did not get into this particular resurgence of history, the concept of them even understanding what you're even talking about is alien to them because they don't even have a historical frame of work. We can see retrospect because we was all learning it at that time. We had to sift through things and go through endless amounts of lectures. We had debates. We had arguments. We had whatever we had, but we are better now because the concept of when I look at the people who missed out on that, you can't even talk to them because the simple fact you got to start from ground zero in the aspect of they're historically illiterate. And I find when a person is historically illiterate, it is the greatest cancer known to man. You talk about the people who went, it's to the point where if you say something to these people about things that you know, and it's commonplace to you because you have a historical frame of reference that even sets up the ability to want to know. Whenever you even mention this to these people, the masses, it's almost like it's alien. They have no concept of what you're talking about based on not common sense, but one single thing, not having an adequate concept of history. So here it is when you talk about religion, they can't get it because their historical framework is not even in place. You see what I'm saying? So in so many words, it goes down to this. A person without a historical concept of the geography of what placed them on the earth is not even living. I don't give a doggone if they are pillars of society.
if they don't have a historical reference to what brought them here and what this is all about, then they're not even living. It's literally the difference between life and death.
And it is. To say that the least would be to say that one is sleeping.
Right.
But there's no greater joy than to be in one's mind. And when you're in your mind,
right,
you will do things quite naturally. And the sciences and things that we are discussing will begin to evolve among us as people as a natural outgrowth of our sanity.
You know, some of this is not just, once you have a historical framework, some of this is not just critical study. Some of this is just commonplace. You just automatically know it. Once you have a historical framework, you just automatically know things.
That's what I said. We'll go back to our mind, and we'll do things naturally.
Right. To let the genius flow.
Correct.
You see, to let the genius flow.
We're going to find an interest in chemistry.
Yes. Now, we set up a historical framework. I'm going to give a couple of bibliography. Because some of the stuff I'm getting ready to get into now is a conspiracy of this information. I gave you the book Hermeticism and Gnosticism. There's a couple of books on music, as well as this guy Mustafa Gandala does some stuff on music. Ari Swallow Lubit in Sacred Science, and the one you call the Wisdom of the Temple gives a reference to the music. On the historical aspect, now there's I can't think of this guy, the Sufi master. Wrote can't think of the Sufi master name, but he said that the new religion of the future would not be a religion, but would be a music. It must have scared the hell out of the powers that be, because they took heed to that. His name is Khan. I can't think of his man's name. I can't think of his name, but anyway, he makes this, a super master makes this observation. Now, on one aspect, I want to deal with some stuff that is critical. I want to go into a history of music from the modern aspect and try to explain some things that is quintessential for today. And to do this and all, I want to deal with a couple of things. Number one, at the turn of the century, we know that we had ragtime, which the guy Ken Burns did a whole history of jazz and failed to mention anything about ragtime, but you had your ragtime to come out at a certain point. You know, you had your blues that followed, which is nothing but a combination of old folklore music that's been around since slavery. You had your first aspect of the gospel from the Fisk Jubilee Choir singers at Fisk University that went around the world, which took these Negro spirituals and converted them into Negro slave narratives and slave songs and converted them into Negro spirituals. They were one of the first ranges of that to set up the first vocal aspect of the gospel music. Now, despite what the Christian or what the gospel holy rollers want to claim, that they don't have no blues albums in their house, that the origin of the gospel music that we have now, that from Mahalia Jackson on in, and she's considered the lofty side of this thing, on into what we have now was set up by a blues person. So the music, now we have the Fisk Jubilee Choir singers, sets up the philosophical aspect of the Negro spiritual. So that's where you get whatever your spiritual teachings of Jesus or whatever, you get that from them taking this thing from the slave narratives on in and making it into the first time these slave rhythms or slave poetic aspect comes into view. At the Fisk University, Fisk Jubilee Choir Singers.
They did not contain, though, the melody of Africa.
No. That's what I'm saying. That was just the poetic aspect of it. The melody came because the melody came through the blues.
Okay.
It was the blues, I can't what's the guy's name, it'll come to me, who made his money playing the blues in Chicago in the 1920s. Lost his money in the Depression. Traveled from Chicago, and I forgot where he went. Maybe Virginia, whatever. And fused in the sound that became popular after the Fisk Jubilee Choir Singers in the church into the rhythmic sound of the blues. Thus you have gospel music. You see, so all coincides. So that is one aspect of it, a fusion of the slave poetic narratives into the blues, the same blues that is sprouting around the country, fuse this in and give you the rhythmic pattern of gospel music.
Couldn't have been otherwise, you know why? Because the church is only a spiritual expression of what we're going through.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
So it would have kind of come out of us, not necessarily
right.
come out of us for what we were.
Exactly.
Because all of this music, whether it's sacred, secular,
right,
is coming from our experience.
That's right. And the church being the only institution we had, you see what I'm saying? It had to come out of the same thing. It had to have cultivated the culture around it. Now, we know the jazz story because there's one key. Now here it is, the jazz story, which deals with this. And that is when, because we get the origins in New Orleans. But New Orleans, part of the different aspects that come together to make the actual music, New Orleans was steeped in the rhythmic patterns of the African drum and other different things based on the connection with voodoo, which those lords, which is nothing whether people know or not, only the ignorant people think that there's something evil. Those lords, which are nothing but the same elemental spirits that goes throughout any religion, is fused in to the musical scale of jazz. It's all connected. Meanwhile, the government has a record on all of this particular aspect. And here it is between gospel, the blues, and jazz. We have a people who, for all intents and purposes, have no power in the society as the greater power in the society. But in some kind of methodical way, the music becomes the alternative lifestyle of dominance to compensate what power we don't have in the society and what rights we don't have in society. So in one aspect, you have a people who's basically still a slave people. There's a limitation on the quality of life in the society. But on the other hand, there's another dimension going on. Whatever is in our fiber, in our being, and in whatever we think, we now can live through the medium of music and fuse every aspect of life that we cannot show in the physical because we are oppressed. We will show in the melody. So on one hand, we have one dimension where we are shut out and life is hard. But on another dimension, we know in our community that we are these beautiful human beings that ain't nothing like us. And we create in our minds and our expression and everything around us, we create. But our blackboard in which we're going to fuse all this creativity is going to be within the music. So, in so many words, the music is a civilization within itself. Right. You might not show it in this particular realm, but you are showing it in the other realm. And as a result, you are creating music not only for yourself, coming up out of yourself, but for the society that holds you captive and keeps you oppressed. So, in so many words, the power, the spirit, the civilization that we cannot have in the dominant culture, we have through music, more than anything else. Because how we feel, whether it's humorous, whether it's the blues, whether it's the great concept of ideas, the great spiritual ideas and the great mathematical ideas, with beats, timing, chords, rhythms, changes. So all of the fractions, all of the science, all of the geometry, all of the geology, all of the mythology, every walk of education, or every walk of intellectual life goes into the music. So on one hand, we exist in this particular culture, and we have our ups and downs in this particular physical culture, but we are a subculture, one that is still cultivating itself to become dominant on the world stage. But in the other thing, on the other culture, we are masters, we are gods, we are nature, we are sorrow, we are pain, we are romantic, we are cunning, we are clever, we are even brutal. All fused into the music. Okay. Now, according to the Hindus, according to the Egyptians, this is an illusion. It's a series of events that don't exist. It's a dream. So if this is an illusion and this is a dream, then in actuality, what we call music was our life in the other dimension, and our life going on simultaneous to this world. They say that there's two worlds that exist concurrent. The world of the dead and the world of the living. But the world of the dead is a live world. The world of the living don't know, because the world of the living could not get used to the concept that when you leave the physical body, you're not dead. So the answers from the world of the dead translated into the world of the living becomes music. The muse, the melophanes, the elves, the gnomes. In alchemical terms, the Negrito, the Substantia Nigra, the red dragon, the green dragon, the Rubido. In Hindu terms, the Ojas, the Shaktis, the Kalas, the Gunas, the Rusas, the Tamas. These are all the same microscopic organic components I was telling you that's running throughout the body. Mm-hmm. This is their world going on and getting down funky. And the blacks who don't have a world in the physical world is reporting this shit and creating this stuff, putting it to scale and arranging it and composing it in this world. Mm-hmm. So it's one civilization going on this world that we can't see, being introduced into the physical world that we can see. And in so many words, whether we like it or not, America, in every race, is shaped by this expression that is going on mainly by the Africans in America. Okay. And the Caribbean coming in with all the rhythm coming in, which represents a gateway from Africa, and putting this stuff all together and culminating this stuff into what we call jazz, blues, and then going on into, it gets to another level where we start showing our dominance by the 1950s. 1955, then all of a sudden, we've already had close to 40-something years of black, 40, maybe almost 50 years of black music. Mm-hmm. Now it's getting ready to take center stage, because you have your pioneers, Duke Ellington, Count Basie, the jazz greats, Louis Armstrong, the Louis Armstrong. You have Ella Fitzgerald. Mm-hmm. You have all these particular ones. You got Mahalia Jackson getting down on the gospel thing. You see, you got Robert Johnson starting the blues thing that's going on. You got other pioneers like pioneers. They weren't popular, but they were pioneers in jazz, like Jelly Roll Morton and Benny Moten and different ones. Sidney Bechet and all these particular ones. But your main ones have already made their stage. And then you start having you start having this particular thing. You start having, like I say, Ella Fitzgerald and what's your other girl, Lady Day, Billie Holiday. You start having all this stuff. So they've already been introduced into the culture where even white people can see these particular ones perform on stage with a form of dignity. And not only that, these ones, they were dressed well. They had a world of their own. They were treated with respect by white folks, and guess what? We lived through them. Although we were catching hell, we had our icons as Duke Ellington dressed up in a nice double-breasted suit and plays the piano. We lived through him that's being accepted by white folks. Mm-hmm. We lived through Louis Armstrong, because we didn't throw him off as Uncle Tom until later. The concept of Uncle Tom, he was not that type of concept, because they said even most of the cool words came from Louis Armstrong. So you got to look at the era that he came out of, and you can't put him in the class of a person that intentionally wanted to go against black people. He was just being himself. Count Basie, Lady Day. The women could live through Lady Day. The women could live through Ella. You know what I'm saying? The women could live through Ethel Waters. Mm-hmm. The women could live through Lena Horne. You see? Mm-hmm. So you got this thing going on. All right. It's getting ready to take an upswing into the 50s. Right around the same time, they find out one other thing. At Yale University, they find out that there's this substance called melanin, which is the chemical aspect and the hormone aspect of what has been going on inside of these people for all along. Okay, now it's really getting ready to get funky, because you had the first one who was real polite and all, but then it starts to get too real complex in the 50s. Then you start getting Charlie Parker, who's taking this thing to another level. This thing is no longer just music that fits the society in a happy level. This is a music whereas you got to be intellectual to start enjoying it, because it becomes complex by the early 50s. Charlie Parker's on the scene. You see what I'm saying? Dizzy Gillespie's on the scene. You see, they're fusing a whole new thing together. What follows them is also Miles Davis is starting to come on the scene. You see what I'm saying? At the same time, and young John Coltrane. So now this thing is getting complex now. It's getting complex just as the melanin is. Because remember, melanin always changes. Thus goes the universe. The universe is always in change. You see, melanin is called chaos. And chaos is, the law of chaos is the law of change. Movement. Flow. Flux. Now, the law of change starts coming in. All of the genius stuff, it starts coming in and starts getting complex. Meanwhile, the singing aspects start getting complex. It's got a little bit of humor in it. It's got a little bit of sorrow. The blues is taking an upswing and starting to get into a little more rhythmic pattern. Thus comes what? Rock and roll. Now,
well, rock and roll was an attempt of white folks to copy the rhythm and blues.
Well, that's what I mean. I don't want to say the word rock and roll. Rhythm and blues. That's what I want. That's what I'm going to call it.
All right.
Rhythm and blues. You're right. That's a better word. I mean, you know, listen. This comes into the 50s with the rhythm and blues, what they call rock and roll. Now, there's another aspect that is taking place now. The polite person that is aware that he is just coming out of a form of slavery in severe segregation, is coming of age. His arrangements are becoming a little more pruned. You see, he's tightening up his elements. He's becoming a sex symbol, not to the black race, but a sex symbol to white race. Because remember, the whites, they experienced the whole jazz craze, but they didn't experience the blues craze. Now, because the popularization of this blues craze by the white boy Elvis Presley, introduction into mainstream white America, they fall in love with him and look over here and the master where he's copying it from, found out they liked him too. Meanwhile, in the jazz age, you got much more sophisticated sex symbols in their singing, like Nat King Cole. But back on the rhythm and blues, you got people like Jackie Wilson, Sam Cooke. You see, Sam Cooke. Other people, just giants at that particular time, like a genius, Louis Prima, a genius. You know, different ones at that particular time coming up. Then all of a sudden the government says, look, we got to control this thing. You see. Next thing you know, they got to kill the sex symbols. So the first thing happens is Sam Cooke mysteriously dies. It's a conspiracy. Even to this day, when we go and say, well, no one really has got a real handle on how a man really died. Several stories. But the point I'm trying to make is, there's a conspiracy and there's not a real concrete level of his death because it was a conspiracy. They took Sam Cooke out. They see the early remnants of a sex symbol. And you can't have the sex symbol. Why? Because the sex symbol represents Osiris. Osiris stands between two women. If you see the posters, it's one of Isis and Neptune's two sisters. In Greek mythology, Osiris is Dionysus, whose whole realm is surrounded by a whole bunch of women called Maeonides. In India, the Osiris is called Shiva, who is surrounded by a whole bunch of women called the wives of the sages, the 10 Mahabodhiyas. It's a whole concept of the women who is the savior, who this savior is the champion of women. The Muses is already in the mythology. Then the mythology starts taking center stage as a romantic act, takes it back to the Osiris thing, and the white boy starts getting scared because he understands that this can liberate people. And they can never show the black man's dominance. Because one thing that's simultaneous with our oppression is sexism was long before racism, but then again they go hand in hand because the black man is a victim of sexism as well as racism. Because in the history of the white man's attitude towards us from slavery on up is he has feared our sexuality because he feels inferior to it. As far as the black man, and we suffer from a form of sexism because of our sexuality. You see, so our racism is not just our black skin. Our racism that is put towards us is also because of our sexuality and his inferiority towards our sexuality. You see. Why is he inferior? Because our sexuality is superior. Bottom line. The white man ain't no fool. You see. The devil never was a fool. How can he rule a whole bunch of people? See, so our sexuality comes into play. Then they start bumping people off quietly. Then Frank Sinatra, who wants to become the new king of jazz vocalist, understands one thing. If he's going to go around as the king of jazz vocalist, Nat King Cole's life has to be short-lived. Because Nat King Cole is a much more advanced and extreme talent who could play the piano and sing at the same time. And has a much more superior voice. So he mysteriously dies. You see.
When you say mysteriously,
they've been filling people with this so-called cancer thing for years. See what I'm saying? One good way to get you in the hospital and kill you anyway is to tell you you got cancer, and then gradually kill you. Now, this thing goes to a spiritual level that John Coltrane, well, Charlie Parker, first of all, brings this thing to another level. He's the one that starts this complex jazz on another level. And isn't it funny that he mysteriously died in the Rothschild's house, and the so-called Rothschilds are the same people as the head of the Illuminati. He died in one of the white Rothschilds' apartments. You see, and they're the head of the Illuminati. The house of Rothschild. The head of the secret society. So Charlie Parker gets bumped off. You see. He said he just laid back across the bed, but I'm saying they killed him. I mean, they were vulnerable because they were dope addicts, but still, yeah. And it's time to go, it's time to go. He was 34 years old. Now, you have John Coltrane is playing the music, blowing the saxophone. He backs up Miles Davis. He has a spiritual epiphany. Starts studying Eastern philosophy. He has a wife that is inspiring him. When he goes to that particular level, they realize that this man is a complete genius. All of a sudden, he mysteriously comes down with cancer and dies because he mysteriously dies, because it's simple. We all believe that the doctors are in our best interest. You see, it's the same thing with this AIDS thing. They don't have to, you don't have to die from the disease they tell you. Because if you get if you come down with anything and you go to the doctor, they can lie to you and tell you you got cancer, tell you got AIDS, and then what they do, they start the process of killing you. Yeah. He was vulnerable when he first walked in the hospital. Mm-hmm. So he mysteriously dies. Then, jazz is being hit hard. But now it's time for the blues to go to another level. They got all the rhythm and blues going, no doubt about it. But then you have the blues say, we're going to even go to another level. They create something called what sets up the basis for hard rock. Because hard rock, the basis of what they call hard rock, all the white boys play, was invented by one single person. It didn't happen before he invented it, Jimi Hendrix. Mm-hmm. So the basis of what the distortion, because his stuff was clearly way better than the distortion of this stuff that came out of it after it followed him. But the basis of hard rock, it was no person doing it until he invented it. But when you listen to him, he's nothing but just taking another later version of the blues. Mm-hmm. He's so talented that his music starts to put people in an altered state of consciousness.
That's where this is going.
That's where this is going. To start putting people in the altered states of consciousness. Yeah. At this particular time,
it had to be a conspiracy.
Yeah, it's a conspiracy. They start putting people in the altered states of consciousness. You see, the conspiracy is, if you're ruling a people And you're trying everything to keep these people on a certain level, but these people are rising. You don't know how, and then you look up one day and you find out that the music is at the heart of them rising. Then it is key that there's going to be a conspiratorial element and insidious behavior by the United States government and the powers that be within the confines of the music industry.
Correct. See, and this is what so many of our people, the reason why this is difficult for them to understand is that because they don't know history, they do not know that we have been at war.
At war.
From the time
right.
From the time the Europeans invaded Africa and declared war on us to this very day, the war has never ceased. And
in this particular case, wherever we favor strong, that's where the warfare is going to be. Well, for most part of the 20th century, because we was locked out of other society, the arts was our battlefield. It is where we flourished in. So naturally, that is where the conspiracy is going to be. If we have a people that have a consensus from a Masonic point of view, that we must never rise.
They became so afraid of our genius in the musical dimension that they took music out of the schools.
That's right. Now, going on. Show you the history of this thing. You have Jimi Hendrix set up an alternative, started putting people in alternative alternate states of consciousness. He dies in 1970. In 1992 or 1993, MCA put out a doggone compilation of his music. And whereas the woman who was with him, the white girl that was with him, in so many words, one of her statements was she gave the whole aspect of how he died, and in so many words, the man was murdered. But in one of his songs, because he's spiritual, he said that someone would murder him in his sleep. And she says that he was getting ready to go back to the United States. He was going to hook up with the Isley brothers, because those were his cousins, and they was going to take this thing and going to make a whole other level of music, experimentation. You know, he was getting ready to go back to the United States, had a headache that night, went to bed. He had a headache. He wanted to go to bed. She convinced him to take the sleeping pills. He took the sleeping pills. It wasn't no dope, it was a sleeping pill. This is the way the thing goes. And he went to bed. She said she woke up, and he was still living, but she had noticed that he had vomited in his sleep. And then she went on back to bed. Then the next day they said he drowned in his own vomit, some stuff like that. In so many words, they slipped her in there to take him on out. Now going on with the conspiracy, because he was the only one, because of his genius, that it was based on a sex symbol thing, that was outside of the sex symbol aspect, because he was going with the white girl or whatever type thing, and most black people wasn't listening to his music. They were just scared of him. But that sex symbol thing went on to the point where, as in the 1960s, you get the book, Neil Wilber's book, Luminoid. One way they killed you, they bought so many people off in the 1960s was your plane fell right out of the sky. And so therefore, your boy, who had a strong voice, plane fall right out of the sky. What's your boy that died in the plane crash?
By the ship in the bay.
Otis Redding. You see. Then the 70s come, but before the 70s come, this is what happens. You got James Brown doing this thing and all. And I think that James Brown's force was so powerful until they couldn't touch him. Because every now and then, whenever they have a status quo, every now and then there comes a force that's so powerful till you can't do nothing with it. And that was James Brown.
Well, they tried to take him.
They tried to do it, yeah.
They shot at him, they hit his van about 15 times.
Yeah, they didn't say they didn't try, but it's just that the spirit in our race knows that certain things will devastate us. There are some people you can take out, but there are some people that it would devastate us. You see what I'm saying? So he had to say the left, so therefore, he was one. I think that James Brown would have affected more people by dying than a Martin Luther King ever would. Why? Because you got more people have more personal experience with him. That his music is in their lives, and we're talking about too much talent. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You see. Mm-hmm. So that was one that was just one of those geniuses that was able to, to sustain itself. Now, a few other things I want to deal with. Mm-hmm. A couple other things. You got Marvin Gaye, because it's always about this black male. Marvin Gaye, on the other hand, does some things, has his spiritual epiphany, and says that I'm going to tell the people about this kundalini and this sexual tantra. Does this album, Sexual Healing, end up getting bumped off 2 years later?
Yes, but that's on fire.
Huh? Yeah, but isn't that interesting, though? Because, see, why is it there's always something that's so mysterious? You see. So mysterious. You never know how this thing goes on. Now, a lot of the conspiracy, in the 80s, they start having these androgynous figures. Like Michael Jackson and Prince. You don't know what they are and stuff, so therefore it's not going to really make a difference. Mm-hmm. But there's a big conspiracy, there's a big conspiracy which leads to the 1990s. And that is this. They found out that they put all kind of germ warfare on black people in the 1970s. Black people just don't know it. Remember, Jack Felder was saying that he had done some studies on colonization, and said that they put so much stuff on black people in Africa, but the Constitution was so strong as far as their genetic makeup until the white people ended up dying from half the germ warfare that they put on black people in colonization. And he was talking about that in colonization. Well, in the 1970s, because I always thought this was kind of funny now. Follow me on this. Mm-hmm. Okay. We got a white man that's unrelenting when it comes to his racism down south. Killing black people going left and right. And then in 1970, this thing changes overnight. Pure racism still exists, but I'm trying to say this particular part. Mm-hmm. It's almost like it just changes overnight. One minute you got people being lynched, and the next minute you got people getting beat down in the 60s. You got people being killed. And then all of a sudden overnight it changes. It was almost as if somebody called in some people and made common sense to them. Listen, we have a way to kill these people off, but it has to be covert action. We can no longer afford to do this on an overt level because it shows too many contradictions on the world stage, and we can't front this democracy if we do this thing on a level. The age if we don't do it on a covert level, the age of this can no longer go into a technological age with us being the type of overt beast that we are. So I know that it was a consensus with the secret society, the Ku Klux Klan, and everybody to tell the general racist to not show the racial overt oppression that he did from the 60s on back. Get where I'm coming from? Mm-hmm. It just changed overnight. That was a conspiracy of the same thing, let us go wise and deal with them. Why? They say if we do the covert action, and we can kill these people off with germ warfare and every other kind of thing we want to kill them off with in the 1970s. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to give them TV shows, we're going to give them movies. We already got the new, what's called, we're going to make them and let them go about as they please, and we're going to make them seem that they are right. Then this is what happened. They had a conspiracy because they wanted to try to kill these people off, and then one thing happened. They said, when they looked up in the late 70s and early 80s, they said, what is it? We have tried everything that we could to wipe these people out with germ warfare, and we know some of the stuff we put on them, why these people still living. And they figured it out. Black people was healing themselves through the music. Now, how was it done? They was lining the music up with the melanin. Now, an LP, it was through the LP, the wax, is a black round disc. Anything round represents the black dot or the eye of Heru. Not only that, if you understand anything about rubber and vinyl and anything like that, is that whenever rubber or vinyl or any kind of plastic come out, it is clear. And then they have to cook it down to the carbonical or its carbonated form to make it black. So once you cook something down to a carbonated form, what you've actually done is cooked it down to its most melanated form, because melanin is nothing but dark matter, carbon. Okay? Now, so you got a black granite disc. Now, the album is not like a CD. A CD is a hologram. It is taken from somewhere and put into a laser. An album is literally has grooves on it, which means it's an actual press recording into carbon. Because it's a black disc that's cooked down. It's oil. Yes, petroleum. Then, most LPs, if you want to get the real good sound, is done on either, the cheaper one was a sapphire needle, which is a stone, and the higher ones were diamond needles. What is diamond? A diamond is carbon. Sapphire is a stone, which is still a form of the melanin. So you have a diamond needle, you have a record with an actual recording on it. You can feel the grooves. So it's not a laser hologram. So therefore you got the needle, you got this on the black carbon, the round disc, turned up, it coincides with the melanin, it's got muses on it because it's music, which is melanin, and what it was is black people were healing themselves through the LPs and the 45s. So they had to get rid of the LPs. In 1990, when they went completely wiped out the LPs and went to the compact disc. Then they used to have, the stations used to be 100 watts. Now they'll say they're 100 watts, and most of these particular stations, the frequency is low because they found out that was curing people. So there's a conspiracy against the sound, because now they found out that all that time that black people was healing themselves because they was dealing with the music. And they was healing themselves, and now a conspiracy starts. So the first thing they do is you completely wipe out R&B. Now, this is where we get into the melanated part of the discussion. And this is the information that is based on trial and error and based on what happened to me recently. I had a wax build up, but I could hear fine. It just was annoying. It was like a heavy clog, but I could hear out the ear. So to put a long story short, I had some sisters do ear candling. The sister does ear candling, and she candled out my ear and candled out the wax out of my right ear, which was clogged up in both ears. So once you candle the ear, I could hear so well until I could hear all types of things in my body. Now, in my body. So the first thing I did was I said, well, wait a minute, hold on. There has to be something related to the ear and related to melanin. I already knew it was because I heard Richard King talk about this stuff. But I said, let me go through my whole metaphysical library and see can I find this stuff. Go through the whole metaphysical library, can't find nothing on the ear and hearing. I said, that's odd. But I always know when white people, because most of those books are written by white folks, and when they omit stuff, it's because it's not beneficial to them. So I said, okay then. In this case, let me go to Richard King. Since he's the authority on melanin. So go to Richard King and write in his book, lo and behold. But I had remembered Aleister Crowley in his book of Thoth had made this particular statement that the Horus lock or the Heru's lock was representing a chakra called a Bhavarandra chakra in the ear. And it's the highest level of spirit, an akasha. An akasha means black substance, the Akashic records, which is melanin. So he said that the Horus lock was representing something in the ear that represented the highest form of a spirit called a Bhavarandra chakra, which is the highest form of spirit. Man, that's a heavy statement that he makes. Crowley, in 1947, before he dies, makes this statement, but yet I don't see it in none of the white people books. That means they must be omitting something because, number one, it don't work for them, because, they can't hear what we can hear. As a matter of fact, our music disturbs a lot of them. Our real classical music, you see. And they can't see what we can see. You see, that's why we all look alike. Now, going right ahead now keep on now. So I can't find nothing in the white books. I go to Richard King and write in his book, African Origins of Biological Psychiatry. He talks about the inner ear nucleus. And he says the inner ear nucleus is the doorway to the temple. He said not only the inner ear nucleus, he said that the inner ear nucleus is where your sight is developed from the inner ear nucleus.
So you mean sight and sound?
Yeah.
Deriving from the same source.
He said, but the sight and sound, but the sight is developed from the inner ear nucleus. You see. He said, but the inner ear nucleus is the doorway to the temple. That means that the pineal gland is more susceptible to vibration than it is seeing, because this is the cheek. This ain't nothing but the prisms of colors that come into being. You see what I'm saying? And all. But it is the inner realm, and the pineal gland is more susceptible and more receptive and responsive to vibrations which deals with sound.
Right.
Now here it is. This is the reason why they got to stop the music. Because they understand that based on the new age that we go into, when one of the super masters say that the new religion would be a sound, then they got to stop the sound. So they create the CD, and I'm going to show you something. This is the magic. Now you got to listen to this.
What is deep?
Do you know that the CD is designed and the music now, the music that we hear on the radio now, or the new music, is designed so it don't reach the inner ear nucleus of the inner ear melanin. So you hear music, but you don't hear music.
Yeah, how is that? How is that possible?
The music you hear is set in the same way white folks hear music. They're only hearing, just like they have surface melanin or a certain degree of melanin. The music that you hear now, it's a hologram. It's not a real recording. It is something that's put on a disc, but it's more of a hologram. Listen, now, let me explain something to you. Now, listen. These two eyes, they say, give you illusionary phenomena. They only capture rays of light and give you this particular perception of sight. It's a hologram, the whole book, Michael Talbert's Holographic Universe. So what they did with the compact disc, or what you call the CD, is they was able to take sound, a vibration, and take it off of the vibratory level and put it more on a holographic laser level. So on one aspect, you will have surface vibration, but the vibration don't enter into the inner ear nucleus. So you can hear the music, but your inner pineal gland does not receive the sound. So therefore, black people start getting more sick. The first thing they do is they turn down the wattage from the radio stations, although they say it's 100,000 watts, they turn down the frequencies and black people start getting more sick, much sicker. Start getting sick, let's put it that way. They, the science of healing ourselves through the music is becoming less and less. Now, less and less. Because even if you go hear live music, it's one thing, but the healing came with having your medicine in your house at all times.
See, and that's the start, because African society heal through music and dance.
That's right.
They come together. It was a spiritual thing.
It was a spiritual thing.
Even psychological healing.
Exactly. Now, the dance part was, if you listen to the rap music, which took over all this stuff, the young people, it's a real low beat type music. It's not really made for high energy dancing. Plus the culture is not that of a dance culture. It's for hip hop, cool, laid back culture. And dance is the only thing where you go into what is called dream time and you commune with the entities. Your whole body gets into the whole rhythm of dance. Now, gets into the rhythm of dance. So now this music here is not designed for inner ear melanin. Now the new music you hear, it has a low beat and a little kick to it, but you don't have the great arrangements you used to have with the horns and the low bass. You had a combination of both highs and lows. The new music is just computer stuff that don't give you none of the great arrangements. You see what I'm saying? So it is, the music company got on top of it and they designed it so it doesn't hit the inner ear melanin. Now this is the last part of the aspect is this. The first thing happened with me was once I got my ear cleaned out, is I got obsessed with sound. I went from 3 speakers to 14 speakers. Went to 13 speakers. And start going to a whole other level. It set up a whole force field around the house. Healing and everything. The key here is, I messed around and put the 14, went up to, when I had 12, went up to 13, went to 14 speakers, and I blew out my system. So, I had to go and I had to go and get a new system. Went to go get a system, and I found out that the new stuff certain things have happened. See, you can override the CD and get what sound you want if you have a graphic equalizer that you can set the range with your hands and stuff. But you got to have tape 2 monitor to plug into your equalizer. Most of them don't come with tape 2 monitor. You see. Mm-hmm. I'm running most of the LPs because a lot of them don't come with the phono no more, and a lot of them don't come with a tape 2 monitor. They're taking all these things off so you can't get the doggone equalizer. Then if they say they got a built-in equalizer, it's set by the components that they want you to have. And then not only that, check this out. The new systems are set to no matter what you put on these new systems, they will still come out with the prearranged sound that they want you to have. And all of this is to stop the inner ear melody. So let's say if you get an LP, if you get a phonograph, and you get a graphic equalizer, you better go get you some stuff from 98 on back, or 99 on back, because the new stuff, 2000, 2001, 2002, the systems, whatever goes into the system, they still got the actual system arranged to wherever pumps out, I don't care how loud, it don't hit the inner ear melody. So there's a conspiracy of sound and a lockdown on the melody to the particular point that you don't hear yourself. We're not dancing no more, and this is another part.
And when we do dance, we're not dancing together.
We're not dancing together?
We're separate.
We're separate? Not only that?
We dance, we used to hold our own.
That too. The slow drag is non-existent now. And see, not only that, black life, black club and party life is at an all-time low now all across the country, whereas white people is getting down. This is all over the country. I go everywhere. You don't even find, because then again, on the other hand, every time there's a black club, they close down the black clubs. Mm-hmm. Come to find out, there's another thing, too. They found out that when black people used to party in them clubs, white people started dying. Couldn't take the energy. Mm. The energy in the astral field that was given off in them clubs, white people was getting sick during the weekend. So if you notice how, I don't care how nice a black club was, a black club always shut down after so many years. So they are actually destroying the sound because they don't want people to get to the inner ear melanin. Mm-hmm. You see, the inner ear melanin. So what I suggest is, first of all, find you a system, any home stereo with tape 2 on it. Get as many speakers as you can, and then get you a graphic equalizer. That will override your CDs, and if you can, get your phonograph. Now, you don't have to get new stuff. You can go now, you can get the old classic stuff for $1 in some places. I'm just talking about for the people that want to somehow start collecting, go back and get you some old stuff. That's all you need and stuff. Mm-hmm. And like I said, get you your graphic equalizer so you can put your you can have the opportunity or the control over what levels you set. Mm-hmm. But one of the keys here is to experiment with sound, because that is the gateway to the muses to get that up. This is the way people should heal themselves. Mm-hmm. We tend to get out of music at a certain age, but we even know in the church that most churches strived when they had excellent choirs.
Well, let me ask you about that. I mean, if the CDs and that range of music has been deprogrammed for not getting into it.
Yeah.
What about live music in the churches, like choirs and
Well, see, there's only one part about it. That is an element, as well as African dance, as well as African drums, But what they were mostly interested in is your home access to things, because the simple fact that the home access is you have a constant healing mechanism going on, and that's what they was trying to shut down. That's what they was trying to shut down. I'm quite sure that any type of live fiesta is good, and that could be an alternative. But it has to be something. It has to be something on a much rapid and frequent base than sometime when we get it broke up. So you know what I'm saying? On that particular aspect, like I said, there's always exceptions to the rule. And it's not that this stuff is impossible to obtain, even in the home thing. It's just a matter of people need to be made aware of it.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? They need to be made aware of it. One of the keys here is dancing. Dancing is quintessential. Number one is good exercise. Anytime you're doing something in motion, when you're breathing is a form of meditation called the science of breath. A lot of people used to astral travel and do things when they jog. They had to breathe a lot. Right. A lot of people in sex breathe a lot and you go to another level. Some people, well, also in dance. I used to lose myself on the dance floor. I was in another world. And like you said, slow drag is almost something that's non-existent, almost obsolete. And shoot, the black community was built off of slow drag. That's the key. That's right. The black community was built off of the house party. The black community was built off the black man singing. To his woman. You see. And this is just basically to end.
It's important, and I'm going to let you in with this, but that whole switch from a time when black men sung, they made love to their woman through music, in music.
Yeah.
And it has went from love and call and a reunion, that whole dynamic where we were pulling one another together to where this generation has seen fit to call our women bitches, to call a mother bitches.
Well, you know what?
The lowest, nothing of unity.
This is how I know it's a conspiracy. Because right now, if you go on TV and curse, or you go on TV and do anything that's outside of the code of what they want done on prime time, you either bleeped out, or they won't pick you up a lot of things. You see what I'm saying? So how is it on one aspect you can't do certain things on TV and it's not allowed, but yet you can do it in the music, and they'll record it and sell it? That is because there is a conspiracy there too. If they didn't allow it, if they didn't encourage it, and
matter of fact, they filter out the good stuff.
Exactly.
That is positive.
Right.
That is doing the opposite. That's filtered out.
Yeah, if they didn't allow it, right, it wouldn't happen. So right there is a conspiracy. Right there, it's blatant. I'm quite sure that you couldn't. In the 60s, the 70s, I don't know any time where you could have made a record where you could just curse people out and call them a bitch and all this kind of thing here, and thought that somebody was going to, not only was it going to sell, was any fool going to release it or not throw you out the damn building? So for the mere fact that it's being allowed is the simple fact that you got somebody that has manufactured that.
Mm-hmm. And again, that takes us right back to where we began in terms of mind control.
Mind control.
All these mechanisms of mind control.
Of mind control. And like I said, mind control is the greater science than electricity. Because every now and then the electricity does go out. But when you think about the masses of people who are under the yoke of this particular mind control, it is literally one of the greatest sciences ever.
And that's true. And that, too, is chemistry.
That's
because you have to understand the vibrations and elements that go into creating a certain feeling, a certain way of looking at yourself. That's all thought out in science.
There's a whole book called
Science on how to make people act the way you want them to act.
There's a whole book called Mental Poisoning.
Yeah.
That's still in print. I think the guy's H. Spencer Lewis. I think that's the guy who wrote it. It's still in print. There was another one by Stephen Jacobs called Mind Control in America. Mind Control in America. And it talks about this same thing. It also talks about if you have a baseline and you separate the hives, which is your horns, that you separate the hive from the horn, or let's put it vice versa. You have a horn high frequency, high guitar, and you don't have the bass. You have an imbalance. And so what happens here is the pineal gland and pituitary gland don't function on a certain level. So let's put it this way. Let's say the pineal gland wants to secrete the night hormone melanin or melatonin. And you have a certain low baseline in the daytime when it was supposed to have been something lower at night. In so many words, what this thing is saying here is you can have an imbalance where you got your highs and your lows are not being imbalanced on the music, whereas the secretion of serotonin and melatonin can become off balance. And one is doing the opposite from the other based on the music that you're playing. Or a total shutdown in all of it. So what he was saying in the aspect was that certain ranges of music secretes melanin, melatonin, or serotonin. And whenever this is off balance, it either is not going to secrete at all or it's going to throw the thing off whack, out of whack. Because remember now, most white folks go crazy because of the serotonin production becomes too high. And all Prozac and all that is just a serotonin blocker. It blocks the production of serotonin so that the white folks don't go crazy.
One final question.
Yeah.
Because most of our people are still in the churches, can we achieve the kind of understanding that we've talked about here if we are looking only to the Bible for our spiritual understanding?
Like any institution, wishful thinking, but let's just say it has to be an overhaul. I find something that's much more deadly. I think that the Bible, basically our church was a metaphysical institution at a certain time. Even that the white man looked up and said, hey, wait a minute. We gave these people this religion, and we wanted this thing to destroy him based on them being just mindless slaves to this thing. And our spirit was so advanced into it made it into a spiritual phenomenon at one time in America. That cannot be denied. That cannot be denied. I can say for most of 80 years of the 20th century. That cannot be denied as far as our church. There's only one problem I see now based on this whole thing is I believe that the government even came in, because I don't even think that even this, I don't even think that they can even trust even the black church, because they know that the Spirit can come in and do what it needed to do in the midst of any type of doggone organization. It's done it before. Mm-hmm. So my point is, I think one of the major things as far as the church now, I think, which is a tragedy, and I know this has something to do with a government, here it is again, a government input, is the church now has gone too far and out of order, which is what I call, or what they call, prosperity theology. And what I mean is, most of the preachers now are teaching prosperity theology. And in the particular aspect of this, they're saying that based on how you pray is how much money you're going to get or whatever kind of thing, but the only person that seems to be getting rich is the doggone preacher. Most prosperity theologians are the ones that's amassing the wealth. And the point I'm trying to make is this. It's dangerous when you do that, because number one, it's dangerous when you do that because number one, you disenfranchise people. Let's say a person don't get rich because they tithe. So that's all the thing about it. You got the tithe. Mm-hmm. Then that's another way to make a people disenfranchised and confuse some people. Now, mm-hmm. I think it's kind of bad for the simple fact it's about prosperity thing. Now, when did God become this economical?
It's materialism.
Materialism. When did God become this so-called economical beacon of respect for people who want money when the 80 years that we were stuck in this thing, when we had the church going for us, the church did amass money as a community unit, but we were poor people. And if the church was sufficient and suffice for us for 80 doggone years when we didn't have no money, how are you going to say now that the church is about having money? The problem here is that the government needed to make a new Negro. They knew that black people earn more money now than they've earned since we've been here, and they understood that if black people would use this particular money and start earning this money, then maybe black people might take another look at religion and go, hey, wait a minute. This ain't what it's supposed to be. So what they had to do was they had to bring the theology up to par with the new Negro that had all this money. And so therefore, it's about theology liberation. No, excuse me, prosperity theology. Mm-hmm. And this is very dangerous.
Yes, about materialism.
Materialism.
It does not have the science of spiritual evolution.
Yes. All that's done.
Transformation.
Yes.
A spiritual transformation so that we can harness the power to move ourselves from enslavement.
Yeah.
Doesn't move us back into our vertical relationship with our spiritual being. Mm-hmm. Doesn't open up our centers.
Yeah.
It has some good, and I don't want to knock the church. I mean, I've been there. I've been in the pulpit for some time before I left it, but I was there 15 years. Mm-hmm. And I saw that the church, when I say the church, I'm talking about the people, in their unity, in their oneness, in their coming together, in their spiritual vibrations and oneness, created miracles there. The problem is that it does not open the gateways and the pathways to our total self. It's limited. That's the only thing I'm saying. It is limited because it's limited. It's not the full spectrum of who we are. It's not fully aligned with our spiritual being.
And I think what it's supposed to have done, and this is the sad part about most organizations, they are predicated and built upon their brand of truth. And they, for some reason, can't seem to stand outside of them being exclusively sectarian in the aspect is, in an ideal world, it should be to the point where as we would have been able to understood what we dealt with religion and spirituality in the context of Christianity and Judaism and Islam into that, and say, well, we were here, but that's the history that was given to us, and try to fuse in the greater understanding of all the other African science as far as the history of this thing to make clarity on it.
Correct.
But then again, on the other hand, that would be an ideal world. Most of the time, they don't want to understand that all religions are but one and have a common thread in the aspect of they all come from one source, the ancient mystery system. And this is only a fragment of the ancient mystery system. They don't want that. So you talk about a cancer when it fails to not seek for truth.
Correct.
But I think, well, I know that despite that, the law of the universe is the law of change. And I'm not talking about a change that's going to occur thousands of years from now. Hell, it's been thousands of years. We are on the verge of that change right now. When we, just like I said, anytime the government does one thing, when they blow up their own buildings to distract people, one of the number one rules of mind control is if you can distract the conscious mind, you leave the subconscious mind wide open to make any kind of thing you want out of it. And one of the major distractions was 9/11. Now, another thing too about change, the insidious behavior of world government. This is outside of the black church because we wasn't involved in this. But I'm talking about world domination through major religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. In the course of less than 1 year, since 9/11, all of them had fallen. Islam was attacked at the onset of 9/11. The Jews have made fools out of themselves by killing up in a war that lasted the last 2 years. So that's powerful because they can't say that they are elite people that shall inherit the earth, these white Jews, when they are a strong arm that's killing up people. And then last but not least, because we're talking about Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And last but not least is the Christian aspect in the papacy of the Pope and Catholicism with all this thing that's going down with these doggone priests coming to light, obscuring these boys. So in the less than a year, we have seen the strong arm and the religious regime that is a fascist aspect of the world on what we call major organized religion all fall. You see, within less than a year, all of them are under attack. So if there's any kind of solace or any type of assurance, right there is showing you the change is actually happening. Whenever you see the Pope and the Catholicism and all that, and whether it's directly put together by them. My point is there's something in the air to even make it to the point where as they have to even show their stripes. But if it is spiritual, then we see a break in the old garrison or the old machine. You see what I'm saying when it comes to these religions. They have all taken a beat within the last year. Mm-hmm. Christianity under Catholicism, with the boy toy, with the preschool and all the and molestation. The Judaism with Israel acting like a fool, killing up people. Mm-hmm. And Islam, in whatever the aspect that they had, with this whole 9/11 thing, we do know that they weren't responsible for it, but still yet. Their particular aspects of what they did to the slaves, let them get their behinds kicked. And Allah wasn't there to help them. Mm-hmm. You see. So that is something else. That is something that we can say in actuality the change is here right now. We just have to open up our eyes and look at it.
That is true.
You see. Well,
I mean, it has been another one of those marvelous and wonderful journeys.
Yes.
Can't thank you enough.
I'm telling you.
And I'm sure that those who watch this series will recognize that we have selected, at least the series has attempted to select the deep wisdom of African people. Therein lies the key to our liberation.
Yes.
It's our deep wisdom. Just want to say, drop your buckets where you are, which means begin right where you are to do all in your power to guide yourself and your family to a liberated mind. So you start by learning your history, by being productive, by being honest, by working together, by reaching out to your neighbor, to your black neighbor. Let's do business together. Let's make what we need to survive. Let's make our clothes. Let's make our food. Therein is our industry. We can put our people to work by buying from one another, by appreciating one another, by working together. Drop your buckets where you are. Teach your children chemistry. If you don't know, learn. Get them interested. Let them know these sciences are our sciences, and we can master them all as well as any other people. Better than any other people, because they are indeed ours.
That's right.
They're in our genes. Bobby, again, thank you very much.
Okay. What humans have done, humans can do. All right.